I really have been inspired and loved all of the talks that we've had so far. And so what I want to bring together today is we've had a conversation about the challenges that we're facing. And I want to give an intro into the afternoon and into our discussion in the future of how the Jornada is thinking about maybe some potential solutions and working with you all in building these solutions. So even though it's me up here, I'm representing the work of many and all of the scientists at the Jornada today. So I want to thank them for that contribution. So as you probably have gathered by now, we are reckoning with a lot of variability and change on rangelands. And some of that variability is not new. Some of that is just an artifact of working on rangelands, as our speakers today have highlighted. But some of this variability is new, and some of the changes that we're seeing on rangelands are new drivers and new magnitudes at new times. And this is happening on broad scales with climate change and other broad scale drivers. This is happening on societal and economic scales, and how we use lands and manage lands, and how we understand land potential and ecological states and how they're changing. And as Joel highlighted, unfortunately, this isn't going to go away. We are going to continue to face ever increasing variability and change in the whole socio-ecological system of rangelands. And this is having implications across our world. And unfortunately, we have more questions than we have answers. And those questions really span scales and span all of the facets of living and working and managing and valuing rangelands. From big, bold questions like, how do we adapt to these increasing variabilities? What are the short and long-term feedbacks between land management, a changing climate, ecological state change? Are we accelerating things inadvertently? How do we avoid that acceleration and build resilience to that acceleration? Do we have opportunities for maintaining or improving our resilience in social ecological systems? And while we're doing all of this, how do we better understand opportunities for mitigating climate change at the same time? So this is a really tall order that we've all been grappling with today. And as our speakers earlier have highlighted, there's a number of things that we need to do as we think about adapting rangeland management to a changing climate. First and foremost, we really need deeper and broader understandings of how these systems work and how and when and why they are changing. We need a good understanding of these technologies and how we can use those to support adaptation. And that includes existing technologies and management strategies that have been used for decades or centuries or millennia, but also new emerging management strategies and options like restoration treatments, heritage cattle, the Criollo program, virtual fencing. We also have needs for formalizing or recognizing new decision support frameworks. And maybe that includes, as others have highlighted, integrating traditional knowledge with Western scientific knowledge within a community space. And other times that's more formal decision-making dashboards like what Joel highlighted earlier. And all of this is working towards building adaptive capacity and the urgent need to expand our resilience and enable the use of technologies at strategic times and strategic locations so that we make sure that we are maximizing variability when it happens in a good way. What happens when we have 2 inches of rain in October, and how can we use that to our advantage in managing rangelands? How do we embrace and embolden community-led management partnerships and knowledge production that's really centered it and grounded with these place-based knowledge partnerships? And how do we really make sure all of this information is accessible? It's not just locked up in scientific institutions or agency files, or even as Rich highlighted, as we have aging generations, how do we pass on this information and this knowledge that can really empower us in managing in the times ahead? And so we have some big, bold needs. We have needs to assess how systems are changing and what those impacts might be. We need the ability to evaluate effectiveness and trade-offs of current and potential technologies as we think about changing, maybe adopting new technologies or expanding our partnerships. We need opportunities to take a step back and evaluate those and tools for evaluation. We need to prioritize opportunities and identify the risks of adopting or not adopting new management strategies. I think a lot of times we talk about making a change or making a new management decision, not recognizing that not making a management decision or not changing is also a decision that could have big impacts. And as I highlighted, we really need accessible information that's real time and supports agile decision making. And so what we've been thinking about is how do we really build this global rangeland knowledge system that examines all the dimensions of managing rangeland systems and empowers the many partners and stakeholders of our rangelands that can support decision-making at different scales for different rangeland uses and across ecosystem services, and that really connects local knowledge and management decisions in the context of variability and land potential, and recognizes that we all have different paths through understanding and managing rangeland systems. As you see in my little cartoon over on the right, we have two people who are, maybe managing the same components or same types of components, or interacting with these components, but their paths through them are different. And we need to both embrace that diversity and enable that diversity to come together for new perspectives. And so as we think about where the Jornada Science program is going and how we can best work with our partners, we've started to think about a really dynamic knowledge system that's continuously updating and provides everyone real-time supported access to both each other through information, but to updating information and new technologies and understandings of land potential. And that information can be climate, soils, and vegetation related information that reflects both past, current, and future condition. This is information and tools that allow us to assess effectiveness of actions, identify management options, and explore the scenarios and trade-offs of those, and really ultimately is centered in community-led management and partnerships. And so over on the right, you have this figure that kind of is our somewhat working draft model of how all of this could work. And I won't walk all the way through it, but I just want to call that we have people centered in the middle of this, because it is our partnerships and relationships and conversations with each other that really drive our community knowledge, both on a scientific perspective and from a management perspective. And then the other thing that I'll highlight is that this is a really dynamic system that's continually updating based on new science, based on new management practices, on the ground adaptive management. We always have more to learn, and what we want to make sure is that we're connecting what we're learning to actions and potential future actions. So what we're going to highlight in the rest of this talk and then this afternoon is how we're starting to build the pieces of what we think might be a rangeland knowledge system. And those pieces have three main components. One is rangeland condition and trend, and how we put that in the context of land potential or ecological sites and soils at both broad scales and at site-specific scales. And then finally, how we provide real-time information to support precision agriculture and adaptation. And that's both through a climate adaptation framework and precision ranching systems that connect us to productivity. So I'm just going to blitz through a couple of tools. Some of them you're going to hear about this afternoon, and some of them might be helpful background to the tools that you'll see today. So one of the long-term legacies of the Jornada has been standardized long-term monitoring. And as Karen highlighted, we have helped a number of agencies and partners and worked with you all to implement and develop standardized monitoring tools as captured in the monitoring manual for grassland, shrubland, and savanna ecosystems. We know that these methods have been used across the world really, but in the US, over 70,000 monitoring locations have used these methods and collected this same data. And so that really enables us to look at rangeland condition and trend and variability across land ownerships and in a really collaborative way. And so all of these data we're working to harmonize within the landscape data commons so that BLM can chip in their data, the Jornada can chip in some of our research data sets, private landowners who have maybe used these same methods can chip in data, and we can start to get a bigger picture of what's going on a regional scale, but also help to interpret what's happening on our land ownerships in the context of maybe our partners and how we can build these cross-fence partnerships, as Sherry highlighted. The other opportunity that we have and we've been working on at the Jornada is building out models that rely on these standardized monitoring data. And the National Wind Erosion Research Network is a good example of this, where we have developed at a small number of research sites based on that, a model called Aero that gives us an assessment of wind erosion risk on rangelands and croplands. And this model can then be applied to these standardized monitoring locations. And we can start to look at what parts of the country or what parts of our ranch maybe have more or less risk for wind erosion, or if we did a shrub treatment and removed all of the shrubs, what might the implications of that be for our wind erosion risk given our soils, and really better informed decision making with wind erosion information data. And so you'll see on the right, we see that we have it looks like higher wind erosion risk in the Great Basin, and sort of patchy and highly variable wind erosion risk currently in the Southwest and in New Mexico, but we need to dig into that more and see what's going on there. The other opportunity that we have for understanding vegetation condition and trend is the Rangeland Analysis platform, which provides us with spatially explicit estimates of rangeland vegetation conditions. So these are satellite-based estimates of vegetation cover and herbaceous production that are produced going back to 1986. 1986. Niall talks a little bit about that and some of the opportunities that we have for understanding vegetation trend through tools like the Rangeland Analysis platform, and we'll be demoing that this afternoon and talking a little bit about the trends we're seeing on the Jornada from this tool. And the really cool thing is we can start to really piece all of our tools related to vegetation condition and trend together. And we're also doing that as part of the Landscape Data Commons, where we have standardized monitoring data. We're bringing in research, we're bringing in new models that then develop new kinds of information and new kinds of indicators, either spatially or temporally new indicators, or new types of information like wind erosion information, bringing it all together in an integrated system. And what we're working towards with the knowledge system is adding more dimensions to this figure that we have here, adding the social component, adding land potential, adding management options and management decision-making tools. So that brings us to the next point, category of tools that we have, which are land potential and ecological state tools. We have the Ecological Dynamics Interpretive Tool, or EDIT, which we've developed with NRCS and houses ecological site and state information. We also have an ecological state map of the Jornada that looks at current vegetation condition, and we can pair that with management information to help us understand risk and resilience on the Jornada. We also have the ability to get site-specific land potential information through the Land Potential Knowledge System, or Land PKS app, which enables you to see what exactly is happening on the soils that you're standing on, and pair that with other management information and land cover data. We also have a set of tools that are emerging that help us provide us with real-time and future vegetation information. The Rangeland Analysis platform, as I and others have highlighted, gives you 16-day biomass estimates throughout the season. So you can see if you're on trend relative to historic, are you above, below, or average for historic trends? And GrassCast provides us with a prediction of what's going to happen with rangeland productivity in the future. And so together that we're getting towards a place where we really do understand in near real time what's going on from a productivity perspective across large landscapes. And then when we pair this with precision systems for arid land ranching, like you'll hear about this afternoon, where we have sensor-based data both on our livestock, and we can see where they're moving, on water sources, on other key pieces of livestock management infrastructure, we can really start to be strategic and agile with what parts of the landscape we use and what resources we use and when. And finally, we can do all of this together with a climate adaptation framework and a tool and perspective that really brings climate to the front and center of how are we using those tools, when are we using these tools and management options, and making sure that we are incorporating both past and current variability with an understanding of future vulnerabilities with respect to climate change and how we might respond. So as we work towards a rangeland knowledge system that really couples community-led decision-making frameworks and operations and ways of making management decisions with rangeland information tools and connecting those tools together, we really want to hear from you about what would you like to see in a rangeland knowledge system? Is a rangeland knowledge system even something that would be beneficial to you? And so we have some considerations for you guys this afternoon that we'd like you to be thinking of as you work through the stations. One is, how might you use these tools? The second question is, how does your perspective affect how you use these tools and think about climate change and changing landscapes? And how might these tools become more connected to support you? And finally, what are we missing? Or maybe more appropriately, who are we missing from these conversations and considerations? So we would love to hear your thoughts